if I can find this hard drive, I will be a billionaire. I'm so close.
No, I already am a billionaire. I'm just a billionaire who happened to misplace $500 million or whatever.
I found a little Easter egg hidden in the.
I give you Easter eggs, man. Don't you worry, dude. I know somebody at some point, even if it's some garbage guy from a landfill retrieving this hard drive, somebody will hear it.
What's this?
God's going to play it back to us.
That'd be interesting. I don't know what this backbone of that story is, but like a garbage man who finds a abandoned hard drive of a podcast that was never aired, and he like starts listening to it.
Oh, that's cool. Or
that
even the hard drive that has all the Bitcoin on it, because that actually happened.
Yeah, the guy, he lost his hard drive of Bitcoin. I remember that.
But he wouldn't have the key, though, so he wouldn't be able to do anything. But maybe he could, like, try and pretend to... I mean, that'd be an interesting thing where he's, like, he finds it, and he has to pretend to be somebody big to get the key to then get the money.
That's kind of cool. That's like a weird version of a heist movie. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I also... It makes me think of... I've had this really bare bones idea of a homeless guy who finds a phone, and maybe he finds it off of a dead guy or something. But then, like... And then he is like the daughter of the person's like reaching out, and then he doesn't have the heart to be like, oh, they're gone. And so he tries to keep the conversation going, and then forms this like weird relationship with this person that he now cares about, but they don't even know he exists. I don't know.
Yeah. They think he's someone else.
Yeah.
That's actually cool. I like that. That's got legs.
Yeah,
I would tell both those stories right now, man.
Let's do both of them.
I would definitely tell the garbage man story. I feel like that's way up our alley.
What, the garbage man story of what he finds he finds a Bitcoin hard drive.
Yeah.
Do you want to pivot to that? Do you want to do?
That's up to you, man. That's up to you. You know your bit, and if you feel like whatever, I don't know. I feel like roll with it.
Yeah, I think it's that'd be actually an interesting way if we pivoted to do this down the road. Is if we just did a cold open. And we were just talking and kind of workshop and like playing like this. And then we took one and we're like, that's it. And then we run the rest of the hour with it.
That's cool. You could probably do that with what we just did.
So it started already. We're already maybe we're already here and everyone's heard this.
You didn't know this, Tommy, but you've been in an episode your whole life.
Oh my gosh, it's Truman Show.
Yeah.
Well, hey, audience, if you're listening to this, welcome to StoryFellas, the podcast where we make stories and we break stories. I'm your host, Tommy Antonucci.
And I'm your host, Zach Lovelace.
This might be one of the first ones where you heard early because we were just playing around. And I think we're going to run with something we played around with. Zach, if someone wasn't listening to the first half, can you tell them what this story is that we're thinking about?
Yeah, so we basically just came up with a scrap through conversation just now about a garbage guy who works at a dump, who finds a hard drive that has probably $100 million worth of Bitcoin on it, which is based on a real life story. I don't know much more about it besides this guy has the key, which is the password, which is a very complex password for this money, but he lost the hard drive and it went to the dump. And I think he's looking through the dump to find it.
I remember reading this article, and I think he brought on volunteers, but I think he also hired people with the hope that, hey, I can pay you. It's a very weird modern version of a treasure hunt because it's literally there's $100,000 or however much it is.
It's $235 million in Bitcoin.
Really?
Yes, because
I gotta go.
Bitcoins.
I gotta go.
Sorry, guys, I gotta get out of here.
I gotta get out of here.
Let's see. At the time when Bitcoin reached its peak price for 2013 in early December, Howell's loss was valued at just under $10 million in the intervening 9 years. So, do you do the math? The price of a single Bitcoin has swelled to $22,755, meaning Howell's lost Bitcoins are now worth a whopping $182,296,000. So $182 million, which is around, what are they doing this math here? Around 234 million.
That's crazy, man.
How do you get that? I don't know.
That's a weird treasure hunt because because he has the key, right?
Well, yeah, that's what's like kind of like almost perfect for it in terms of a story. Is like, I have the key, but you're nothing without me. And the key
like
is
somewhat, it's like it takes away, because a lot of treasure hunt movies are it's like first one to the treasure wins, but that doesn't work in this type of story.
Yes, you have to get him.
You need him to unlock it, so you need to make some deal, and that's even interesting. We're really just flying in. Audience, how are you? How are you, audience? I know we didn't do a cold open, really.
Audience, you're in it for this, man. You're in it for this. You're listening for this type of thing. Stories come. You get an idea when you're just like at the deli. You're at Subway ordering a $5 footlong, which is probably now like $7.25.
It doesn't roll off the tongue anymore.
It doesn't anymore. But yeah, you get an idea and you want to just like sit down and roll with it. That's basically this moment. Is that we just thought of something, and it's based on a real life story. So part of me is like pivoting in my mind where it's like, how can we differentiate it? Mm-hmm. To make it, because I don't know if the guy would actually, it's his one story, so I don't know, you know what I mean? Like if he could sue you for doing this story, but for the sake of this episode, who cares?
For the sake of this episode, it's just a fictional person that lost a hard drive with money in it.
Of course.
So I immediately think of, there's different avenues that the story could go, because the protagonist could be the guy who's lost it. Mm-hmm. The protagonist could be the guy who finds it and does research and realizes, I got to figure out how to get in well with this guy. It is interesting if I don't know, kind of a ransom story, where the person has it and they say, and then maybe that is the protagonist is the person who lost it, and they're like, hey, I found your hard drive, but I'm not walking away with a 10% cut or something like that.
Yeah.
I want
the whole thing.
50.
No.
Which I think this
totally
definitely could be like a dramedy, because it does feel like that weird era where I think we need to decide which point of view we're going to land on, because both can be very funny.
Yeah, the initial idea was of the guy working at the dump. I don't know if you've ever been to a city dump, but just like kind of a blue collar guy that's out there just dumping garbage all day. And I don't know what signals to him that this is the hard drive, but he finds it and takes it home. Maybe he doesn't even know it is to begin with.
I think he could be a collector. I think he could, in WALL-E, Pixar WALL-E, he does this dump stuff, but then he collects things that are cool. And if this guy collects, it's an old Nintendo 64, I'm not gonna compact that, and just like vintage stuff. And then he finds a hard drive. If he's kind of into analog, old school tech.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
I think that'd be cool. I picture him kind of in this big blue jumpsuit and these big Coke bottle glasses.
Oh yeah,
and like blonde shaggy hair or something like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think he either just like, again, collects junk that he can sell. Obviously, I think that's probably what I would do if I was working at a city dump and I found some cool stuff. It's like anything that seemed like it was halfway intact and whatever, I would just have a keep bucket. But yeah, he sees it. Maybe we sow some seeds where he's got a kid and his kid knows the story, and I don't know, or maybe like the people come looking for it, because obviously they would, like just like the real life story. So maybe that has kind of passed, and then years later he finds it. Although I don't really like years later, but
it feels like a long time. So hear me out. I was thinking he could be a single guy, because I think there's another woman who works at the dump too that he has kind of a crush on, and then she becomes invested in this little situation he's in.
Of course.
Because I think that could be cute and fun.
Oh, I was thinking she'd be evil, but yeah.
Oh, okay. You always want to make the love interest evil.
No.
Always. 100%.
Women are evil. It's so funny because it's like so true. You know what I mean, Tommy?
My laughing does not approve of sex comments.
I've been married for like almost 10 years. I can say this. There's no way she's going to back out now. No.
But I just pictured some sort of, I don't know. I like the idea, the visual of this guy who's a collector. And I think it's, I don't know. I guess he could be hard on his luck, and it's like, I got to get this working. But it also seems like, is he the shady guy? Is he trying to get out of what's keeping him from just phoning up this dude and being like, hey, I found it. Do you want to split something?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the guy. Like if we develop the person who's lost it, he's a very famous person, you know, maybe a billionaire of some kind. Although if he was a billionaire, why would he care about the money? So,
yeah, that's true.
Maybe he starts to do it and he sees the guy and he's just like, I don't know. Or the guy, the main character is just a bad guy, and not like bad guy, you know, but just like, okay, he's going to try and get as much money as he can. Because the idea that we originally thought of was it's just be funny to see him try and get the password from the guy.
Yeah.
And would it be worth his while to basically concoct a whole scheme where he can get the password from this guy? I think that would have to align with the person who's lost it, that guy. And we should name our guys. We get really far in before we name our guys.
Yeah, I was thinking from the start. Some reason Clyde stood out for the
finder guy,
the trash guy.
I like Clyde. Clyde's cool, man.
I like Clyde.
And let's go with Dan for the
guy
who lost it. Yeah.
Okay, Clyde and Dan. I like the idea of this feeling like, I don't know if you've seen Masterminds with Zach Galifianakis, where it's based on a true story where he tries to rob the bank and with a bunch of country guys, and they're not very good at it. And
those guys, the same people making that movie. Hold on, I was reading about this the other day. The director, who is it? Well, Jared Hess. That's the guy who did Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, really? Okay. It has that kind of feel. It's actually very funny. It's very kind of weirdly wholesome, goofy. It's not something to take. It's funny because it's based on a true story, but the packaging of it is just over the top and wacky. But it's a lot of fun. I actually was visiting somewhere with a friend, and they were like, "Hey, you know this road right here?" I'm like, "Yeah, what about it?" They're like, "This is where they filmed one of the scenes from that movie." I was like, "Oh, that's crazy. That's weird." It was just a normal road, so I was like, cool. But it's something like that where this guy's not a criminal.
Yeah.
But he's like, I don't know. Maybe I like the idea where like he thinks about maybe returning it, and maybe the guy that is rich.
Yeah, he just slights him.
And he's just rude and not a good guy. And then he's like, okay, I don't want to give you this. And then he decides, maybe him and I don't know, the female accomplice or whoever, or his friend, decide they're going to form a team. And they're like, we're going to unlock this for ourselves. And I love the idea of them trying to figure out how to break into this billionaire's home so they can try to discover what
I like that too. I was thinking through that basically as soon as he loses it, the guy goes to the dump. And that's the opening of the movie. Or the opening of the movie is Clyde finding it and not knowing what it is, but he just sees it as being like, oh, this is kind of weird. Like maybe my kid would like it, whatever. And he tucks it away or maybe hides it as soon as he sees that Dan has mistreated people. So he shows up and he's just like all mad about everything. And, you know, he has it like at his feet basically. And he just like pushes it back behind like the file cabinet or something. And the woman sees it. So she's kind of like in on it without him even saying it. He just kind of has to rope her in. And you go from there where it's like, it's just a kind of a split second decision where, oh, this guy's looking for this thing. Oh, okay. You know, I'm sure that probably happens often enough, but not like, not this type of scenario, obviously. So some guy rolls up with a bunch of black SUVs, you know, and it's just like, we're shutting this down and we're going to go inch by inch and we're going to look for this thing. We're going to tear this place apart. And he's just mistreating his team. Maybe he's like the guy that owns the dump or the foreman that runs the dump.
I like that. I think I could see a funny scene where the billionaire guy's like he's like, do you have gloves or something? And he's grossed out by the trash, like does not want anything. And I think the more we make him a caricature of himself, he's a rude rich guy that doesn't care about anything. Yeah. Because I do like that scene where the guy is going to help him and then realizes realizes what this is. Maybe his kid. Maybe he does have a kid. Maybe he's a single dad or something. I do like the idea of him and this other girl. And maybe he's not even interested. Maybe it's not that he has a crush on her, but she sees that he's hiding it
Yeah,
and she's
she
like,
can- she
"Hey,
can
I know what
blackmail
you've
him.
got, and I want
Yeah.
in." And then he reluctantly does that, and then they form. Some
And she
sort
can
of
be more
relationship.
evil than he is because she's a woman.
Oh gosh. Oh, Zach.
Obviously, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But in reality, like within the story, I do think it works best if she actually is more evil than him and she pulls him, deeper into the hole, basically.
Well, I feel like I think evil's a strong word, but I imagine her
That's
being
fair. That's fair.
being tougher than him, and maybe she knows how to do things. Maybe she knows how to hotwire a car. She's broken into places. Maybe she's got more of a shady past and just has
Yeah.
rough and tumble, where he's kind of a dork and he doesn't really know.
Yeah, I
how
think
to
he's
do
just like
that.
a wholesome guy. Like he's just a John Goodman from the 90s, just like, oh man, hey, I don't know anything about that,
And-
and then this woman, Carla, is a little bit more, like you said. And I actually think it endears you to her that, like, of course she can be shadier. We'll use Zach's word, evil. It's just easy, no, but the idea is that we can motivate her really well by showing her family situation. Like maybe she has a mom who has COPD, she's on an oxygen tank. She's an older woman living with her. It's like, we see that at some point and that really changes. It gives us a full orbed look at her rather than it just being like, oh, I'm a Cruella de Vil. I'm just evil. Of course not. Like we already identify with her being an underdog anyway. But then you kind of throw that into the mix, like second act break. They have to stash the thing at her house or something. And he sees her situation and it's just like, oh, I had no idea. Like I've worked with you for years and I had no idea that you were, struggling this bad and your mom has cancer or something.
Yeah, I like the idea of her being. I think we get endeared to her really quickly. I don't know if you've seen Chris Pine's Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, I love that movie. Yeah.
It's actually super good. I watched it recently and I was like, this is surprisingly good.
It was probably the best movie I saw last year outside of Godzilla -1.
Yeah, it's funny and unique. I think they're talking about making a series of it, which I hope they
so.
do because I think it deserves a bit more recognition. But his companion in that girl who's super tough.
Oh yeah.
I pictured that kind of character a little bit, and I
Okay,
picture the billionaire guy Dan comes up, and let's give her a name.
I said
Maria?
Carla. I said Carla. But
Carla.
I mean,
I'm good with Carla.
yeah.
Carla. Dan shows up with his SUVs and his men, and they're like, "We're gonna look around here," and then he describes. And maybe at this point, Clyde has already taken the thing home. He kind of figures out what it is, and we can decide if he has a kid or not.
Or his younger son helps him figure it out. Or
the son helps him figure it out, and it's like, oh, this is like a Bitcoin such, and so he kind of brings it back to the thing because they don't know how to unlock it. And then the rich dude Dan comes and is kind of berating Clyde and just saying, you have no idea what this is, wasting so much of my time, and just like putting him down. And maybe Clyde's kind of a weaker dude, and Clyde's about to just, and he's like mentioned something about the hard drive to Carla, like briefly, and he's about to just like give it to him, but Carla interrupts. She's like, oh, we will, don't worry, sir, we'll be sure to let you know, and interrupts him, and then basically protecting him. Like she stands up for him when she realizes how rude Dan is.
Yeah.
And then she's like, you can't let this guy have that. This guy's a piece of trash. He's worse than the trash in the dump.
Oh yeah.
And then she puts the idea and says, it's like, we can unlock this and we can stick it to him, because that gives them motivation.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, it's a little revenge. It's a little bit of their life situation that we find out. I like the idea that Dan is not a billionaire. I feel like that's just too far gone. But he's a millionaire who wants to be a billionaire. And I think that is the key, like, funny line. And that might be the along the lines later on is like, I'm not a millionaire, but I want to be a billionaire. That just gives you an idea of.
He's like, if I can find this hard drive, I will be a billionaire. I'm so close.
No, I already am a billionaire. I'm just a billionaire who happened to misplace $500 million or whatever. Yeah, he would see himself. That's already his. He's entitled to it, right? Like
that's good.
I own this dump. Something that Johnny and I, who's a mutual friend of Tommy and I, I work with him, and we often just like depending on the scenario, we have this ongoing joke where it's like, as far as this is concerned, I am God. And just like we talk about like different, like, you go wreck a bathroom or something. And it's like, as far as this bathroom's concerned, I am God. And it's just a funny, like you were way beyond. Anyway, so that's what, that's what Dan would say.
What Dan's doing. Oh man.
Yeah, he shows
good.
up and he is the god of the dump.
Okay. I like this. I feel like we've got that rough beginning. We got the setting. We got the dump. He collects stuff. He's like, and maybe Carla. They're acquainted, but don't really know each other super well. I
feel like she works the office, and he's out there like actually in the field. I don't know what jobs you have at a dump.
She should be in the field if we're gonna make her tough and rough and tumble. I think it's weird if she's going to be in the office. So I think she's like strong and capable and out there with him. And then the guy comes, they find the thing. He discovers what it is. He brings it back. The guy comes. He's rude. She's like, no, we're going to go for this. Yeah. So now what's the game plan? Dan and his cronies leave. They're like, we can't find it. It smells. I'm going home.
Well, they'll send a search party, and they do. They do. Like they have guys at the dump every day, basically. And he's paid the county officials to come out and allow that to happen. And maybe they crack down on things that they were doing because now there's more county presence. So it's like, you can't be taking stuff from the dump. And it's stuff that they would do all the time. And he'd bring home to his kids or to his kid or whatever. I kind of like the idea that it's not a kid, but it's like a younger brother. I know that we already gave Carla, the mom, who's like feeble and maybe ill, but like having a younger brother who's just a like stay-at-home dork, like works remote, super skinny guy that.
Like they're adult brothers, but they're roommates. Yeah, I like that.
That kind of keeps them a little younger too. We're not getting into. I said John Goodman, in terms of casting or whatever, but like young John Goodman, I think would be kind of cool. Flintstones era, 1994, peak.
I've not seen Flintstones in so long, man.
Kate and I watched it the other night. And it holds up, dude. It holds up.
Man, I gotta check it out. I remember my grandma had it on VHS that we would watch every once in a while. But I don't remember much about the movie at all. Isn't a guy from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in that? Isn't he Barney?
Yeah, Rick Moranis.
Yeah, Rick Moranis, yeah.
He's really good. Everybody's really good. I think the only real miscast is Rosie O'Donnell. You're just kind of like, why is she...
Who is she?
She's Betty?
Fred's wife?
No, that's Wilma. Barney's wife.
Barney's wife. Oh.
And it's just like, okay, a little bit of the era. That's fine, whatever. She's totally serviceable, but it just is one of those performances out of all of it. You're like, why is this happening? Okay. But it's all super practical, like practical effects. There's some like early CGI, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, isn't Dino CGI?
Yeah, Dino's. Well, actually, he's like a puppet sometimes too.
Oh, is he a puppet sometimes?
Yeah,
I thought he was always CGI.
So it's cool, and we're about as far away from the '90s as our parents were from the '50s, like when the Flintstones were big, and they grew up on it or whatever. And so it's just interesting to look back at like what was big for them then. Anyway, and we get all these IP movies and stuff, and I don't think a Flintstones movie.
So we're due for another Flintstones movie.
I would write the whatever you can imagine out of a Flintstones movie, man. Like
it'd be fun. A modern, well, not modern Flintstones. You can't have modern Flintstones.
Yeah, modern Stone Age family. Yeah. But you could. That would actually be really interesting because we're interrupting our episode here.
That's fine.
For an unskippable Flintstones ad.
Yeah, don't skip it. It's important. There's a secret message.
Flintstones gummy brought to you by Flintstones gummies. But the idea that we are a society that's now plagued by our technology, and you could look back, you look at that problem through the lens of this like fake prehistoric world, which had cars and all this kind of stuff. I think that would just be really, again, compelling. And go practical, obviously. We always go practical here on StoryFellas. No CGI.
No CGI. Dino is real.
Dino is real. They've
field-grown dinosaur.
Yeah, we've cloned a dinosaur at this point. Anyway, so Dan has left the dump, and he's a millionaire trying to be a billionaire. And Carla sees this. There's just two kind of low-level dump workers. I think that's what's cool. Is they're just guys that that ride around and make sure the dump piles don't fall over or whatever. I'm sure there's some technical job, and all of you StoryFellas listeners who work at the dump can send us an email afterwards.
Yeah, please send us an email. Go to our links below and tell us all the details.
The types of jobs. But there's probably sorting of all sorts of sorting plastic and stuff like that. So they're just people who actually handle the garbage. And then there's a manager they have, which is just kind of, he's butt kissing Dan, he's getting some money for doing it, and he can come into play later where he kind of figures out about their plan and can complicate things. Anyway.
So I think I like it. I like it. I think the next step is they formed this plan. We got to get back at this guy. We're gonna get that half $1 billion, whatever, however much we decide is in there. And I think there's a scene shortly after of he invites Carla to his apartment with his brother because he's like, my brother can figure this stuff out. Because I think, and I was feeling Chris, something alliterative like brothers like Clyde and Chris or something like that.
That's cool. I like Chris. Chris is a classic name too. So
Chris is like he works remote for some random job that I think could be a joke and some random thing. But they're like, hey, and he's like, who's this girl? And he's like, oh, she works with me at the dump. And they explain the situation. And then Chris is like the guy in the chair. They've got this like weird Italian job-esque thing going on.
Yes, I love that.
And I imagine he's like, you're going to need earpieces. And he buys these things on Amazon, and they're the most obvious things ever. They're so big. And he's just like, you couldn't, and Carla's like, you couldn't have found anything smaller than these. He's like, they were on sale.
I was going to say, they were free shipping.
They were free shipping.
I love that. And the guy in the chair thing is really important, like having the little bit of eggheady kind of guy, but he's still like family with Chris, so he can be kind of dumb.
I think he like lacks that social, like he's doing bad things.
Maybe
like,
he doesn't want to go out.
He doesn't know how to be a criminal or anything like that, but he knows computers and stuff. And I think it'd be cool if he somehow figures out how to hack their security system at his mansion or something.
Yeah.
I think that's fun.
I think that is very fun. And I think Chris having a social anxiety type thing could be, he's like agoraphobic, so he doesn't leave the house. And so he only makes money online. Mm-hmm. And that's where maybe he's like, I know people who will do anything. He's like, I'm on the dark web, man. I'm on the dark web. That's how I make my money. And it's like, whatever.
They're like,
you can get into that.
They're like, I can see your screen. It says you're a copywriter. You're a remote copywriter. You're just like, no, I'm also on the dark web.
You write for a baby diaper brand? The Cruiser line is the best line of diapers there is.
Oh, man. But no, that's a great... Do we need to expand this team? Or do you think the duo with the man in the chair is plenty?
I think the duo with the man in the chair is plenty for now. I think once they actually get into actually executing the plan is where we get into things. So I think the plan, like the thing that popped right in my head, and I'll throw it out there and you let me know if you think it works, is that they get a woman, either it's Carla herself or another woman, to try and seduce Dan and give him the thing. Because it's in their best interest, but they have to keep it secret from her. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they cut her in and they're like, oh, it's only this much, Oh, I'm just trying to think.
Cutting Carla in?
Well, no, they cut this woman in. So whatever. She could be a prostitute. She could be a friend of theirs. Like, I think go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really like the scene, and I don't know who would help with this based on our little posse of 3, but if Carla is very like Dungeons and Dragons, like warrior woman, like gruff, but they're like, you have to seduce him. And they have to like someone has to teach her how to be like a fun, flirty woman, because I think that would be fun. That's a funny scene, and it's fun because
she's like worked at the dump and she has to do a makeover and everything, and you start to realize what the story is actually about, which is her and Clyde getting together.
Yeah, I think it naturally is some sort of love story between them. Yeah. But I think. Because
he starts seeing her for what she was the whole time, and she starts really leaning into that, and it's like, oh man! And then they find the thing at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, this pillow is not as soft as I thought it would be. I'm sitting on a pillow for those who aren't watching the podcast. But
Zach just needs to end the podcast right now.
I
He's like,
gotta go, guys. I gotta go.
I'm done. Yeah, I like that, but I feel like Chris and Clyde would not be the ones to coach her. So I don't know if there needs to be another. If Chris and Clyde have a sister that comes and visits, who's like very normal compared to them.
Yeah.
And that could be kind of fun because like she comes, like maybe she brings groceries, like Chris pays her to bring groceries because he doesn't want to leave the house, and she comes when they're all having like this weird get together, and she's like, what are you doing there? And they're like,
They're scheming, obviously.
well, yeah, and they're like, Carla's got a date. She's got a date this Friday, and she doesn't know how to be flirty and stuff. Yeah. And then she's like, oh, well, hold on. I can teach. And then she doesn't even know about the whole gist of the thing, but she's just roped in to help her.
I like that. That works totally. I think eventually she has to find out. And I mean, we could even make her a cop.
Oh, okay.
And then it complicates things where she's like, I found this out. I have to tell them. And he's like, name your price, you know?
I think that's funny because Carla, who maybe had a shady past, like she's like bringing in the groceries, but she's in full cop attire, and she like goes into the kitchen and she's like, why is your cop sister here right now? Like, why? We're literally talking about breaking into this guy's house. I think that's really funny. Yeah, it's a lot of fun conflict.
I mean, there's a lot of farce kind of elements where you have people who are going to try and pretend to be different people, different identities. Like I'm pretending to be this flirtier version than I am. And yeah, I don't know. And I think it lends itself to some really good comedic engines, especially the cop sister. You know, that's a very like relational issue. And that's the Shakespeare rule, which is like, if you want to crank up the conflict, you make them related. So it's like the law that's looking for them. I mean, it's Walt and Hank from Breaking Bad. It's like they, you know, the split between them, the lie is so much greater when I've been lying to someone who's my blood, essentially.
Yeah. I don't see it becoming a full-on tension like Walt and Hank from Breaking Bad.
No, of course not.
Where it's more, maybe at some point she also realizes how much a jerk Dan is, and she kind of lets it slide. But more than anything, she's just an obstacle. I imagine Carla's at the mansion at some party trying to seduce him, and it's kind of working. But then a noise complaint happens, and then the sister is the one who shows up, and then Carla has to be like, oh shoot, like hiding, because why would she be there at the mansion? Yeah. And just like creates suspicion. We should name the sister because she seems prominent enough at this point.
Let's see.
Carla 2.
yeah. We ran out of lady names. Sorry. This is the episode where we just dunk on women the whole time. No, I think Jermaine.
Jermaine?
That was the name that popped in my head.
Is that a girl's name?
I don't know. I don't know any women.
Zach's just trying to put up a brave face. He loves women. He's crazy about women.
I do actually love women. Let's see. It actually means brother, so it's probably not. I am incapable of functioning.
What about? I think
I just wanted something with a cute nickname. You know.
Cat.
Okay. Well, like Carla. We already got the Carla thing.
We could do Maria. I think that was the other one I threw out. Or it could be C, so it's all alliterative through their name. Oh man, Carla's alliterative too.
Yeah, that's my point. It's like, give me a break. I think Marianne works, something like that, where it's like I'm trying to make them blue collar, very relatable. Marianne is from Gilligan's Island, the girl next door. So
okay, you know, and they call her Mary sometimes.
Yeah, or Annie, whatever.
Mary. One of the brothers calls her one. The other one calls her another one.
Yeah, that's not confusing.
No.
But yeah, Carla and Clyde and Chris.
Oh boy,
man, dude, I'm never letting you be in charge of names.
Well, we accidentally slipped into here because I think the brothers having C names makes sense, and then before we named the brother, we named Carla. And that was your doing. You're doing, Zach.
It was just in the head. It was in the head, dude.
It was in the head.
It was in the head. That's the most articulate I can be right now.
All right, cool.
Yeah, so Marianne is the sister, and they have some sort of Polish last name, whatever.
We don't worry about last names here.
We
on
really don't,
StoryFellas.
unless it's like super important.
No.
But yes, so then she's very aware of Dan. He's probably a city builder of some kind, or he's invested in the city a lot, so she knows him. He's a famous guy within the city. And
I'm going to give us a little goal that will help us really get the extra revenge on Dan. Is that because he's a bad guy and we don't like him. No one's rooting for Dan.
yeah,
Clearly. But if by the end it comes to light that he's done shady stuff and he gets caught for that, that's kind of like the extra.
oh, so he goes to jail.
Yeah, like he goes to jail or something. Or he like loses his big mansion. Or it's that extra comeuppance he gets. And we don't have to do that. It could be enough. But I feel like in the scheme of all of this, not just because like I guess he's looking for the money and they're going to find it. But then, I don't know, him just paying for his what an awful guy he is at the same time.
I think he's obviously a bully. He's bullied people around. He's gotten people fired, that kind of thing. And so, he could be a part of some shady city business that eventually comes to light. And Marianne is there to help basically bust him. And then the hard drive is kind of free game. I like the idea that there's a code in the garbage man world, in the dump man world, where it's like, once it reaches the dump, it's ours.
I like that.
Like you gave it up. Like, I'm sorry, it was a mistake. And
I wanted Carla to be dressed in, she normally just wears jeans or her jumpsuit, but she has this really top, like next level dress. And it's really funny if they're like, where'd you get that? And she's like, I found it at the dump.
I was going to say, I'm sure that she found it at the dump. I've been playing with this idea in my head with Carla, but it pushes the conflict out too much. We might want to adjust like how far things are. Like you get rid of Chris and you make Marianne just on top of things. And it's more of this will make more sense when I tell you that like Carla has like a stripper sister and we who's like dumb, she's dumb, but she's street smart, whatever.
Okay.
But that allows it to be somebody that Dan hasn't interacted with. But it's also, you know what I mean? It's not Carla herself. I do like the glow up kind of thing. That's cool.
Oh, so you're just saying that it's not Carla who is seducing him. It's Carla's sister or something.
Yes. And that just opens up to not spend any time on the glow up plot. Basically.
Okay, I think that makes sense, and we don't have to spend the time because now that Marianne's a cop, not that they couldn't have that same scene, but she's already got a lot that she's doing.
Yeah, and I don't know if it really works. Like, and it just feels a little like I've seen it before. And that's fine. I mean, a lot of this you've seen before, but I think I want to get into the Ocean's 11 style stuff where we're in the heist. Okay, we know and the problem is the cast is growing so big. This is probably the biggest cast we've ever dealt with.
So we've got Dan. He's like our main antagonist.
Yeah,
and he's hive mind. There's people Dan adjacent that the people will be dealing with, but they don't have names or anything.
Yeah.
They're just guards and people. And then our crew, which it's kind of the nature of a heist movie, is you need your cast of characters a little bit.
That's true.
So you've got Chris, guy in the chair, techno wizard, hacking stuff. You've got Carla, who's kind of the muscle and the street smarts. You've got Carla's sister, maybe, who's the face. And
Candy.
You've got Candy. Oh man, another C word, another C one. And then you've got Clyde, who doesn't really do much, but he's just like the wholesome protagonist who's caught in the middle of all of it.
I think, I guess that's true. Like, what would he actually do? It depends on what they do with the heist. Like, he drive, he could be the getaway driver.
I think we need to establish early on in the plot something he's really good at. He's better at it ever, and maybe even Carla.
I think he's a dump truck driver, or he's a garbage truck driver. So he comes to the dump all the time, but he's not necessarily And he can do other things at the dump, obviously, but that he's like really good at driving. So they're like, you got to be the driver. It's baby driver, but at a dump.
Yeah, but will driving come in handy when they're just trying to get a password out of a guy?
Yeah, of course.
Of course it will. I do like the idea of him like driving like some little vehicle in the dump when he's like looking around, and when no one else, he's like doing donuts, and he's super good at driving.
That's cool. I think, the driving there are technical skill of some kind. Obviously, Chris is the guy in the chair. He's got the knowledge. Maybe he's just strong, too. He's just a big, strong guy. So if they needed muscle for anything.
Yeah, so, Carla's more if we were doing Dungeons & Dragons, she's like the thief, the rogue kind of person. And then he's just the brawn kind of.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
Yes, exactly. Like I like the idea that she's not necessarily like the I'm going to beat him up too.
Yeah,
but that gives Clyde
she's
some
more.
Purpose.
You've probably not seen the live action One Piece.
I haven't. No. Or the animated one.
Yeah, I've not seen a ton of the anime. I've seen some, but we watched the first season of the live action one, and oh man, people are going to be so mad because I can't remember her name. Naomi.
I can't even help you.
It's the orange haired girl, but in that season, they really established like she's really tough, but she's a thief. Like that's her thing, and she's good at fighting, but she's not necessarily the strongest of anyone. But she's very cunning, and I think that could be what Carla is. She's cunning, and she's maybe had a past.
She's the one who sees the situation for what it is, and is like, oh, well, I'm going to steal this hard drive. And maybe they go, step by step, where they're like, they take it to Chris. Chris can't hack it. He gives them way more information about it. And it's like, and she maybe leans on Clyde and says like, isn't your brother good at this kind of stuff? And then she weasels her way into like, ropes them in, obviously. But it is Clyde's thing.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. So I think skipping to big heist situation, which is weird because you're heisting a password, but maybe they're like, we've got to explore the house and see if he's got it written down. This makes me think of a Joel Haver sketch. I watched Joel Haver.
Oh, I love Joel.
There's like when it's like in movies when people are trying to figure out your password, and the whole thing is like this thief breaks in and the computer says password, and he's like looking. And it's like a framed picture, and then underneath it's labeled my girlfriend Mary, and he's like, oh, Mary, and then he like looks at the note, and there's more to it, and it's like, who dumped me and I hate, and he's like, oh, and he backspaces it, and it's just the whole sketch is him trying to like deduce the password.
I haven't seen this one, but our boy Joel is about quantity, man.
He's about quantity, man. I'll send it because it's actually, I laughed at it. I thought it was funny because the whole and then he comes in at the end. He's like, do you think I just wrote down the password next to my computer somewhere? He's like, I don't know.
I think it would make sense if they knock him out and they know they want to see if it's on his phone.
Okay.
And so they use his face to unlock his phone. My face does that, and so the whole thing is like
hold his eyes open. His eyes are closed.
Yeah. Cut his eyeball out. That they think it's in his phone. So they're like, okay, it would be in his phone. Or it's a series of, because this is a little side tangent here. I own like 1 billion in what's called Nico token. So a friend of mine that I used to work with was a coin guy and like got a bunch of dudes on Discord to like join his coin, and it's not a scam
like he
coin.
made a coin. Oh
yeah, he like went onto forums and Reddit or whatever, however somebody does this, and was able to get dudes to help him make a coin. And there was like a game associated with it. It was pretty cool. It's a pretty cool effort. It's like way too internet for me, but I actually own like 1 billion because I was decent friends with him at the time, and he's like, if you want some, and then he gave me the password, which is like a series of 11 words that all I have is a screenshot of that, because the app is really clear. Like once you like say next, like you won't ever see this again. And they're like not related, they're just like crazy words, like, and you don't get to set it. It's just brute force, whatever. I know nothing about technology. But yeah, so something like that could be a thing where it's like it's a phrase, and maybe Chris is able to figure this out through things that he's said and knowing about the technology. It's like it's probably a phrase. It's probably we know it has to be 6 digits or something, or 6 entries, and that could be kind of cool. Like finding out what the phrase is.
Yeah, I feel like. Yeah, I feel like Chris comes into play somewhere where, one, I feel like if this mansion has security cameras and stuff like that, he says, I can't hack it from here, but if you guys plug this thumb drive, like find his security room and plug this in, then I'll be able to get into the systems and stuff.
That's cool.
Which is fun because I just imagine there's a scene where you have Clyde, you have Carla, and you have Candy, and they're all dressed to the nines, and they're going to this party, trying to crash this party.
Mm-hmm.
That
some
is
city ball like thing.
Yeah, something that he's hosting at his house. And then that's the big story of them being in this house trying to figure it out. Because I imagine Clyde being kind of big and clumsy, trying to find the security room and stuff. And yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of fun and games to be had there. And then whether he hacks in and he says, "Oh, there's a note referring to this," or he hacks the guy's files, and then it's like, Bitcoin login in phone or something like that, and he's like, it's in his phone. You got to find his phone. And so it's just this level of finding things.
I think that's cool. Then it's like, now I got to get it off of him, and it's like, oh, Carla has like light fingers or whatever since she's a thief, and she's like, I'll get it off of him, and that obviously backfires.
Turns out you had heavy fingers, Carla.
yeah, you actually have fingers of lead. And he's just like, escort this woman out of here. But it's up to Candy to kind of, seduce him.
Which it sounds like, based on this guy's personality, would not be hard for if Candy's like batting her eyelashes and she's like, "Oh, you're half a billionaire," and he's like, "Well, no, I'm like basically a billionaire," and she's like, "What do you mean?" And I don't know if they rope her into the whole.
I've heard guys tell me that before.
I've heard people say that they're a whole billionaire before. I don't believe it. And he's like, no, I can tell you, and maybe that's a funny way where she's like, I don't believe it. He's like, I can show you. I've got the password of like my Bitcoin. I just got to find it, and I'll be a billionaire. And man, that's such a funny goal for an antagonist to have. It's such like a.
I know. I mean, it's just
like,
one of those.
I've got to be a billionaire.
Yeah, he's just like, being a millionaire isn't enough. Who wants to be a millionaire?
Who wants to be a millionaire?
Anyway,
Regis Philbin was wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's who wants to be a billionaire. You lean into the trope of like the evil rich man thing, and I'm okay with it for this story, obviously, because he is evil.
Sometimes the tried and true things work. That's why they work. And
it's the Robin Hood story. They're just you're stealing from the king, and the king is corrupt. And I think as long as we take time to show that, and Marianne can kind of come into this at the end, where it's like the actions that they were taking weren't good either. So that as long as they kind of come into an account with that, not that they're like, well, whatever, man, I'm just on the beach sipping my my margarita, even though I'm a billionaire now, or I guess half a billionaire.
Oh, what if there's a scene where maybe Dan is getting caught for some criminal activity? So maybe Dan takes Candy he's like, oh, this is where I keep my personal computer and the password's in here. And then Candy just like tases him and he like falls over and knocks himself unconscious. They're like, Candy, what'd you do? She's like, I panicked. I thought this was the plan. And then at the same time, Marianne is showing up to the party to try to find this guy to arrest him. But then I don't know. I don't know if it's getting too complicated at that point.
That is, trying to cram it all in one way. But
yeah.
I think what needs to happen is Chris needs to have to leave his house. because he's agoraphobic, so he has to overcome that issue. I think Carla needs to tell the truth in some capacity. I think Clyde probably needs to stand up for himself. You know, and that might mean actually like going to jail. And it would be funny if like all of them were in jail at the end, like even Dan.
Oh, I like that. I like that, man. I think
I like that a lot too. It's a little cute, but it somehow fits this world.
yeah, yeah, and it's like they get the password, and it's like not like they're in jail forever. It's like they're in jail for like
Like
county
minor,
jail because they did dumb stuff.
Yeah. I think
I like that.
They would get off on probation or whatever, and Marianne is like checking on them or whatever. I mean, that's probably illegal, but for her to be like the parole officer of some kind.
Yeah. It sounds like Masterminds a little bit as well.
Oh yeah,
Because, well, the way they end the movie, close your ears or skip forward 30 seconds if you don't want to be spoiled by Masterminds. Because they had stole all this money in Zach Galifianakis and had it in barrels and stuff, and then he went to jail for a couple years, and they're like, there's like, out of the $7 million sold, there's still $1 million that was never accounted for, and then it like shows Zach Galifianakis like pushed a barrel into the lake. So it's like one of those things that they paid for their crimes, but then they come out, and they still have their thing that they were fighting for. But I like the turn of all of these people. Maybe Candy, if she's like, I don't know if she's actually in the fold of the full group or if she's just kind of an associate. It sounds like she's kind of in the fold of the full group. I
think once the full heist starts happening,
she has like self-respect, and that's
you
her
probably
thing.
think that she doesn't know what's going on for most of it, but then she makes some sort of decision, like you said at one point, and is like, no, I knew what was going on the whole time.
Yeah.
Like I am, hip on the news or whatever.
Yeah, she's actually like very competent, very capable.
Yeah, exactly. Like she's like, I've had to deal with crazier guys than this. I like the idea that at some point, maybe this is a little bit of a second act break where you change the story where it's going, where they get it from him, but then you realize he's corrupt and he says like, I will pay you to help me get away with this crime, whatever it is.
Wait, who pays who?
So Dan, like they get the thing from him, but in turn they find out that he's actually really corrupt. Not that they didn't sense that, but they basically get employed by him halfway through the movie to help him get away. Like, this was like $235 million, which was enough to push me to being a billionaire. But the thing I was going to do for it was it was key to me getting away with this, laundering scheme, this embezzlement thing from the city. I was taking money from the city somehow. And they're like, he just tells them like, you need to help me. Or maybe it turns on them and he's like, I will kill you because this is, basically this hard drive. I don't really care about the money aspect. It's that it ties me to this crime. And knowing that you found it, I now need to kill you. So it changes it from being like, okay, just stealing to now he knows about them and he's trying to stop them. It's not just, Ocean's 11 at the end where they're like, you kind of see how the crime went down or the heist went down. But rather you switch it to being like, okay, he's now hunting them.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It's not nearly as wholesome, but it still could be. Like it could still land on its feet.
Yeah. I think it can still be funny too. I think.
Oh yeah.
We can explore stuff like that.
But that's just an alternative plot where I'm like, really leave people on their feet because they go in thinking that it's going to be this kind of movie where it's just to get the hard drive. But then you've been sowing the seeds of what Dan has really been up to the whole time. And even Marianne has talked about it. Everybody knows it kind of thing, but it's like there's no real evidence for it. And then he tells them like, that is the evidence. That's actually why I was looking for it.
Okay. So the money is still on there, but then there's also the incriminating evidence.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that. And then, he's trying to make some sort of deal or chasing after them. I like that.
Whatever tax information where it's like clear that, and maybe he had an accountant that died It'd be kind of interesting that they find that guy's body at the dump, and that might be the opening of the movie, and that tells you like what kind of guy Dan is. Where it's like, this guy killed himself. You know, he shot himself in the back of the head 6 times, and at the top of the county dump. He just chose to do that. You know what I mean? And it's like, clearly he didn't kill himself. Like, but yeah, that kind of thing. I like that a lot because it adds a nice weight to it, a nice dark kind of contrast. Dan is not just somebody that's like to be trifled with. He's, you know,
he's Dan.
He's Dan. You ever heard of me?
Do you know who I am? I'm Dan.
I'm Dan.
I do like the idea of early on in the movie, like really early on, they find a body and they're like, oh gosh, there's a body here. And then the audience sees the corpse face, and then you see like picture frames or like some sort of picture of like, oh, my accountant or in the files is like, wait, that's the guy. That's his accountant because that's a nice callback.
I feel like they would identify him as soon as they picked up the body, though. Like they would know him if he's identifiable by a picture, unless it's like we found a body without a head. And then it's like, you know, they took a ring off of him or whatever.
Yeah. But that being said, I don't think the dump people would know, you know, like it's like the dump people report it, they call the cops, and then they're like, oh cool, thank you, they take it, and they don't really think about it anymore.
As long as the two events are separated, for sure. Yeah.
And then in the heist they discover, that's what kind of eggs them on. They're like, wait, this guy was the accountant. Oh, he was his accountant. And then they find like email exchanges, and then that dawns on them, they're like, oh, Dan's not just a rich guy.
I got it. He's in several suitcases. Because the thing is, the guy would have to be
the corpse.
The accountant would have to be, yeah, totally. Because again, that kind of gets to thematically that Dan looks down on the dump. The dump is where he can launder all of his bad things. It's like it's where nobody's looking. And so the fact that it's like we're still finding pieces of this guy, and the thing as well is like you can't make those two events so related where it's like, okay, so how did the hard drive end up at the dump? Was the accountant the one that brought it to the dump? Do you know what I mean? Like, because then Dan would know where it was at because he dumped his body there. I'm saying the word dump probably more than I have in one evening ever. But do you understand what I mean? Like, those two events would have to be separated by a couple of days or something where it's like, oh, we open up on a body. And it's like, that's just supposed to feel like a day-to-day type thing that Clyde experiences. And then later on, it's like, oh, this hard drive's gone missing. All these people are here looking for it. Then they feel kind of related, but they're not directly like, oh, you know, how did it get to the dump too? I think that's probably a question we jumped over where it's like, how did he accidentally, I think maybe the accountant like sent it off, like threw it away, and was maybe out there with Clyde or Dan, sorry. And Dan's like, you need to look for it. And if you can't find it, I'm going to kill you. And he's out there and then he just kills him.
Oh, so he's there at the beginning when they come searching, and then later on they find that guy's body at the dump. That's interesting. I like that. I think that makes sense. This is getting heavier than it was at the beginning, but I think it works.
It's still very funny. Like, I think, like, again, it just gives you a little bit of weight to things. Like, just because somebody's dead doesn't mean it's not funny.
Imagine the agoraphobic Chris shows up at the end and he like shoots Dan in the shoulder or something to like stop him from killing someone. And Clyde's like, he's like, Chris, where'd you even get a gun? He's like, the dark web.
I like the idea that he does come and save them. You know, he shows up at the last minute and is like, overcame his fear essentially. And I'm sure there's a theme there. You know, that just might be like a small subplot. Obviously, it doesn't need to like really tie in, but it'd be best if it did. That he knows that truly helping people is overcoming his fear, you know, and not serving himself and staying at home. So, okay, Clyde is now truly serving people means turning in the hard drive himself, turning into the city. And now that they have the password, they give it to them. And maybe there was a reward for it that, I don't know, I guess Dan would be the one who would have given it to him, but Dan's now in jail, so there is no reward. But maybe the city gives them a reward.
Yeah. Or maybe, yeah. I feel like, because it's going from this weird dynamic, and it's not a problem where these random people are like, let's be criminals, to like pull one over on this rude dude, to find that he's the real criminal. He's like a real capital C criminal. And then, but then which is kind of good because it makes them back into the good guys. They're not just criminals. So then, yeah, maybe they turn it in, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's as simple as that, is they discover their camaraderie and friendship with one another, that, and they stand up, they embrace their weaknesses in ways they didn't do it before. And it could be as simple as that. They just don't get the money. Maybe they do get a reward, but then they go back to their life, but then richer because of this whole experience.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's like, I'm richer in spirit rather than in money, you know? And so I'm a better person now that I've gone through this, and I realize I didn't need the money. And maybe there's the reason why Clyde would even want it is like, so he's like, so I can actually build a house for my family, you know? And like get Chris out of the house or whatever. I'm trying to find like a reason for him to want the money that's good, that isn't just like, oh, because I could buy a car that's really nice or whatever.
Yeah, I like the idea of, I know we've not really played with the idea much, but Clyde and Carla becoming an item somehow in the midst of all of this.
Yeah.
And then it's like the unison of their families. Like it's like her mother on the oxygen tank, her sister Candy, Chris, maybe Chris and Candy, the most nerdy like dude, and this stripper. Like,
well, because he comes in like guns blazing at the end. Yeah, I like.
Oh yeah, he like shoots the guy, and Candy's like, "Wow, Chris, wow," and he's like, "Yeah." I picture him as like McLovin from Superbad. Yes,
yeah, just complete dweeb. You know, we're not
with a gun,
and then he's got like a bigger brother, like an actual big, strong brother. Even though maybe Chris is the older brother. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah. I pictured Chris being the younger dweeby brother, and then Clyde being the older brawny brother.
Yeah, more quiet to himself kind of thing.
Yeah,
but I think Chris, I know it's a trope for me, but he actually has to fight somebody. Like he's the brawn, so he is
the brawn. He has to. It's
I think
maybe
head
it's
of
some
security
guards
for Dan
or something.
Yeah, and he holds them off long enough for like Candy and Chris to get the password by like using his knocked out face, Dan's knocked out face, to open the phone. Yeah, holding your eyes open.
Put his tongue back in his mouth. He's not recognizing him.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's cool. So,
dude,
I like it. We have a pretty good handle of what the movie is. You listening, audience, you probably have a pretty good understanding of what kind of movie this is.
Yeah.
We don't want to honor the thieves. You know, we don't want them to get away in the end. There's a little bit of that original Italian Job with Michael Caine, where the bus is hanging over the cliff, and this is due to the censors, I guess, at the time, or the studio system, that the code that they had, that the thieves couldn't get away. You couldn't glorify that type of behavior. And so all of the gold that they had is on one end, or all of the money, and they're on the cliff, and it's like teetering back and forth. The whole team is on the other end of the bus. So I like those types of endings. It's much more complex too, as opposed to just like, I got it, and now look at my life. It's great because I got money. You know.
No, I like them not get, or they win, but not the money. They win.
Yeah, they win the war, but not the battle. You know.
Yeah, and also the fact that when we started, this was going to be like more of a comedy of these bumbling criminals, and very likely they would have gotten caught or something at the end. But yeah, we're not trying to praise thievery by any means. It's more kind of, you reap what you sow.
Balanced.
It's a reap what you sow story.
It's balanced, and I think that's good. And it doesn't glorify that behavior. I think we are messing with the tropes of the billionaire who's evil, and to have a little bit on the other side of that, where it's like, yeah, to forego the money is actually a sign of self-control, and knowing that things in life, of course, you could relieve a situation like your mom needing medication or something like that. So I think they have to win even just a little bit in some way, like not just the spiritual want, or need rather, within the characters, but like again, the city gives them money or something like that. Or maybe Carla's mom moves in, like once Clyde and Carla are an item, they get married or whatever, and it's like now they all live together.
Yeah, it's one big full house.
And so it kind of solves the problem of like, somebody needs to watch my mom. Well, my brother Chris lives at home all day. But yeah, or maybe this is a little bit of a double back that like Chris has a guy on the dark web that's like, I can crack that thing open, and they have to like meet up with this guy, and he ends up being like a 10-year-old kid. Everyone's trying to get one over on each other.
Well,
and that's interesting.
That's the funny thing is that I picture Brad Pitt like this kind of like gruff. It's like, hey, which that made me laugh of Chris talking like McLovin talking to the Brad Pitt and being like, I got a friend on the forums that can crack this. But it's even funnier if the guy is younger than Chris and dweebier than Chris is.
Oh yeah. No, I think that's.
The kid is like a kid is like, he's like, I don't know, 14. He's like, you wearing a wire?
Yeah. He's all like asthmatic and, somehow lives more at home than Chris does.
Somehow lives more at home.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. But yeah, that's his little battle is that he's got to deal with this guy. And obviously it doesn't work out, but
dude, yeah, I love it. This story is super fun. It's all from us just like playing around at the beginning in the cold open before we even were recording.
I love it. I love the dump and I love garbage men. It's an interesting job. It's one of the most dangerous jobs you can have in the US. And I just like that world I'm sure it's a very interesting subculture of like dudes that collect stuff. And so yeah, that real world, ripping it from the headlines, which this headline is quite a few years old. Let's see, this is 2022. They were writing about it, so it's not that bad.
Yeah, I wonder if he ever found it.
We'd probably hear about it. I'm sure. And we'd have to name it like Dan Coin or something.
Dan Coin.
Or whatever. Something really dumb, obviously.
I've got a tentative title for this.
Oh, good, because I've got a line.
Good, because I've been trying to think passively in the background of a line.
I wrote it down. You could probably, if you're watching the footage at some point, people, you can see me when I wrote it.
Zach's just like,
yeah.
Writing. It's his writing face right there. Sweet. Well, my tentative title, and let me know what you think, is simple. It's very simple, but it's One Man's Trash.
Okay. That's interesting. That is such a Tommy title, dude.
What makes it a Tommy title?
I don't know. It just, your titles have a real like simplicity to them. Not like simplistic. But just,
you're like, I mean that in the most insulting way possible.
Oh, totally. No, but they have a real straightforwardness to them, and that is a good title though. Like it fits with the themes, obviously, of like somebody dumping something in the dump.
It's funny that you say that mine are simplistic because sometimes you throw out a title and I feel the same way. I was like, that's what you want.
Wow, you spent all that brain energy on that, dude. No, I think it's completely serviceable. I know serviceable, I use that as a bad thing most of the time, but it really works. It works. It works.
Well,
I can't think of another title, so it's going to be what it is.
It's one. I just picture it just feels like that kind of funny comedy where it's just one man's trash and it's like the weird group of people that are trying to steal this guy, and then like the rich guy in the background being all snobby.
I like that.
All right. One man's
like
trash.
One man's trash.
Zach, why don't you hit us with an Along the Lines to wrap us up?
Yeah, so our Along the Lines comes from Carla. It's pretty early on in the movie where she's talking to Clyde, and Clyde tells her, like, what are we going to do with $500 million? Like, how do you hide that? How could you hide that? And of course, Bitcoin is untraceable. That's kind of the point. It's a decentralized currency. And she says this to him. She says, I've been poor my whole life. Pretending to be poor for the rest of it won't be a problem.
Thank you all for listening to StoryFellas, a part of the Pemmican Studios podcast network. Check out our show notes for bonus material, links, and more. To find out more about our current projects, send us messages, and suggest ideas for the show, go to StoryFellasPodcast.com. If you liked what you heard, share the show with a friend. Word of mouth is the best way to grow this community. Until next time, go make and break those stories.